Welcome back to State and Local Government. We're going to be covering state legislatures probably into next week. Don't forget, the test is open right now if you're watching this on a Monday. So make sure you take that. If you haven't taken it, stop watching me. Go take the test. Then come back. I'll still be here. I promise. So, like I said, this will be a two-parter on state legislatures. So let's get started. So we come back to this question of how much power should state government have? Let's see, maybe your answer will change after we've talked about legislatures. Because what I can say to you, and probably already have, is that what the governor of Illinois does, what the General Assembly of the state of Illinois does, the decisions handed down by the Supreme Court of Illinois, will impact you all far more than anything that the President of the United States and the Congress of the United States ever does. It's just the way it works under our system of federalism. Never forget that. If you're ever going to run for an office, run for governor, run for state rep. Go to Congress in Washington, D.C. afterwards. But it's here where you can make a real difference a lot faster. So, what are the defining traits and purpose of state legislatures? So, state legislatures are made up of qualified, we use that term rather loosely, qualified in the sense that they meet the constitutional provisions, popularly elected legislators who typically serve in one of two houses. These legislators exercise extensive lawmaking powers and more limited non-legislative powers. Now, what are non-legislative powers? Legislators, even in Illinois, can call hearings, maybe call an expert up to testify before a committee. That's not necessarily legislative in nature. That's one example. But yeah, they have pretty extensive law-making powers. Remember, under the system of federalism, which your test is on, again, stop listening to me and go take the test if you still haven't. Under the system of federalism, states can make whatever laws they want, as long as they are not antithetical to federal laws, or more importantly, the U.S. Constitution. So, these will probably be your discussion questions, to be honest. Describe state legislatures, explain the election terms and compensation of legislators, examine the powers and organizations of state legislatures, describe how voters may write and pass laws through direct legislation. So these will be your discussion questions. So police power, key terms. The state's power to protect and promote public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. Why is it called police power? Well, they can enforce it. If somebody is, say, polluting unnecessarily from a factory that they own, well, they're going to get a knock on the door from, the police department, seeing what's going on, making them stop. Constituent power, a power of the legislature that does not involve lawmaking, such as proposing a constitutional amendment. That's pretty self-explanatory. Referendum, a process by which the legislature refers a measure to the voters for final approval or rejection. We talked about, when we covered federalism, referendum with initiatives. Referendum, again, come from the legislature. Initiatives come from the people. So how are these things structured, and what size are they? They're usually too big. What are the election process terms and compensation of state legislatures. Well, we vote for them in November. We had the primary not too long ago. State representatives have a term of 2 years. State senators, have a term of 4 years. Constitutional officers have a term of 4 years. How much are they paid? Too much. $69,000 and some odd dollars in the state of Illinois in 2022. What are the powers of state legislatures and how are they organized? We have a bicameral legislature, including a House of Representatives and a Senate, and they have powers that are reserved. They operate under the auspices of the 10th Amendment. They can do everything not given to the federal government, not expressly delegated to the federal government. So we'll talk about that a little later. So every state but Nebraska has a bicameral legislature. It's just part of their political tradition, customs. It just worked out that way that Nebraska only has one house. Each legislature has a combination of lawmaking and non-lawmaking powers. So, constituent to power of the legislature that does not involve lawmaking, such as proposing a constitutional amendment, so they have constituent powers as well. Legislatures are elected by popular vote and must meet varying qualifications for age, citizenship, and residence. Age, got to be 21. Citizenship, U.S. citizen. State of Illinois. Live in the state of Illinois. Every legislative house uses committees to review proposed laws and introduce them to the floor. It's the same thing as in Washington, D.C. If there's a bill on education, it goes to the Education Committee. The guys in the Education Committee toss it about for a while, decide, okay, this is good. This is a good piece of legislation. Let's vote it out of committee. They take a vote. They all say, aye, we like this bill. It goes to the House or the Senate to vote on. And if it is passed, it's a law. Now, not every bill makes it out of committee. I just was telling you about what the process would have been, if a bill went through. But that's the purpose of a committee, to look at these laws, decide whether or not they're any good, and refer them out. So a ton of bills go to die in committee. More bills stay in committee and die there than are voted out. And that probably is a good thing, because if there were no committees and the legislature voted on everything that came before it, man, they'd be really ineffective, because they would be so swamped with everything they had to do and look at. So the basic function here is to translate the public will into public policy. So my representative, and he didn't run again, which I don't like, because he was good. He still is good. He's not leaving quite yet. But is Tim Butler. So I live in Lincoln. So if everybody in Lincoln, I think it's around 14,000, 15,000. If all 15,000 of us, for some reason, called Tim Butler's office and said, we don't like the condition of the roads, do something about the condition of the roads, appropriate some money to fix these roads. Tim Butler might say, all right, I'd like to get reelected, even though he's not running. He didn't run. I will write a bill, an infrastructure bill, that appropriates funds to Lincoln, especially, and maybe the rest of the state, to fix roads, bridges, and other things like that, because that is the will of my constituents, and I want to keep the people of Lincoln happy. So translating public will into public policy, and then, the bill passes, and, I don't feel like my tires are about to burst when I'm going out of town to come teach at ICC every day. As we've said, most state legislatures are bicameral. They have a Senate, they have a House of Representatives. An ideal size of a legislature is one in which there are not too many people to make business difficult to conduct, but it's not so few that many interests go unrepresented. So we have 118 representatives and 59 senators in Illinois. Is that too big? I really don't know. That's honestly not a question I've given a lot of thought to. I will say, however, that I think it was back in the 70s, maybe the 60s, the Illinois, I probably didn't get the date right, but way back when, the Illinois House of Representatives used to have, I think, two or three people be elected per legislative district. So the House used to be a lot bigger because there wasn't just one representative per district. Now, we did away with that. I don't know. There's an argument to be made that having multiple people representing a district could ensure that all the views of that district are being adequately represented. Could be. That will cost us a lot more money, but it might be worth it. I don't know. Food for thought. So legislators are elected from districts drawn by the legislature every 10 years on the basis of population equality. So we just went through a process of redistricting. We lost a federal seat in the House of Representatives, so we're down to 17 seats, and the House and Senate districts were remapped. So check, because the representative you think you have might not be the representative you actually have. I don't know for sure, but because I only know about Lincoln, you should check where you live. So states use different names for their legislatures. The legislature and General Assembly are the two most common names. We call it the General Assembly. We have two houses. Every other state has two houses except Nebraska, because they just like being different. There's just one house. Now, I honestly don't know. I get asked this question most every time I teach this class, and the answer's just gone out of my head. I'll throw you 3 points extra credit if you send me an email explaining to me why Nebraska has a has a unicameral legislature. Why Nebraska has a unicameral legislature. 3 points extra credit. You have to include your source too. So the upper house is always the Senate. The lower house is most often called the House of Representatives. It can sometimes be like the House of Delegates, something like that, but it's still the lower house. So to continue, a legislature needs to be large enough to represent the many views and interests in its state. It can't be so large that it cannot run efficiently. Now, there's an argument to be made, that even our lower house with 118 members is too big. I don't have a right or a wrong answer on that. It's just a matter of opinion. Most state legislatures have between 100 and 150 members in the lower house, and we have 118, so we fall in the middle of that. 30 to 50 members in the upper house. We have 59, so we're on the high end there. Is that big enough? I don't know. That might also be another discussion question. You have to wait and see. So every single state constitution sets out its own formal requirements for age, citizenship, residence in order to run for state legislature, the state legislature. I ran for the state legislature way back in 2014. I got kicked off the ballot, embarrassingly enough. Republicans, and this is a whole other story, but I'll give you the quick version. The Republicans and Democrats only had to get 500 signatures to stay on the ballot, and they had teams of people who were paid for to go knock on the doors and help get that signature requirement. I ran as a libertarian. I was pretty much on my own. There was very little, if any, party support. I managed to get 700-something signatures. I filed because if there's no objection to a petition that you turn in, you make it on the ballot anyway, so I figured there's a chance I could make it on the ballot if nobody says anything about it. But somebody said something about it, and I got kicked off. But anyway, I'm proud of what I did. I'm proud that I tried. And I don't know that I'd do it again. Let's just put it that way. So in most states, a representative must be at least 21 and a senator at least 25. Now our state, it's 21 for both. And this lady, State Representative Alicia Thomas Morgan of Georgia, was in her early 20s when she was first elected to office. How old would I have been if I had been elected? 24, 25. So mid-20s, but there you go. So the constitutions define legislative requirements regarding age, citizenship, and residence. And Illinois certainly lays those out in its constitution. Look it up. Legislators are chosen by popular vote, usually in November of even-numbered years, like we're going to do this year, November. You'll still be in this class, so go vote. They serve either 2 or 4 year terms, 2 years for our House of Representatives here in Illinois, 4 years for our Senate in Illinois. And the low compensation the typically low compensation, I should say, keeps many qualified people from running for these offices. Now, the people in Illinois who run for these offices, they make more money than I do teaching you. So I would not call I would not call 69,000 and some change low compensation here in Illinois, but in other states, they're paid accordingly. As it's a part-time job. The legislature in Illinois was supposed to be a part-time job. So, in other states, it still is a part-time job, and these people aren't paid as much. Most states hold annual legislative sessions. And special sessions may be called for urgent matters. We have annual legislative sessions. They don't last all that long. There in Springfield, I think, if I didn't show you guys, I showed the in-person class. They're working, I think it was 30 to 50 days a year. They're in the General Assembly passing things. The rest of the time, they're in their offices or working their actual job or whatever it is. Special sessions, the governor can call special sessions for urgent matters. So like in the pandemic, the governor could have exercised that option. He didn't. I don't know why. You'd have to ask J.B. Pritzker. Pritzker was content to use his emergency powers. Should he have called the legislature? Yeah, probably. He didn't, though. So legislatures can pass any law that does not conflict with federal law or with the state constitution. As I've said before, there's a whole hierarchy of laws, the U.S. Constitution all the way down to city and town ordinances. But the U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Legislatures, they can tax, spend, borrow, establish courts, define crimes and punishments. They can regulate commerce, maintain public schools, and many other things. You can read the Illinois Constitution, which I've urged you to download or print out a copy of, and you can find all these things out. The presiding officers. In the lower house, it's usually called the Speaker, and they are chosen by the members of the lower house. It says Senate here. It's whatever it is. But in our case in Illinois, the Speaker would be chosen by members of the House of Representatives. And the presiding officer in the Senate is either the Lieutenant Governor or a member chosen by the Senate. We have both. Stratton, who is the current Lieutenant Governor, again pre-November 2022, sometimes will preside. Other times there's the President of the Senate, Don Harmon, currently, again, pre-November 2022. I'm recording this. He was chosen by members of the Senate. And the presiding officer will refer bills to committee. The presiding officer will appoint committee members. They'll recognize members to speak on the floor. They'll interpret and apply procedural rules. Now, as the Speaker, who, again, pre-November 2022, because I may use this video again, Chris Welch currently is Chris Welch always on the floor to do these things? No. So, to teach other members parliamentary procedure, Robert's Rules of Order, amongst other things, get them familiar with their colleagues' names. Sometimes other members might be appointed by the Speaker to preside. Nancy Pelosi does that in Washington, D.C. as well. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly within bounds. Now, the committee system, they're set up by subject matter. So, alcohol, tobacco, firearms, education, the environment, things like that. And they'll determine, these committees, which education bills, which bills to do with alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, etc., reach the floor. And again, more bills die in committee than don't. More bills die in committee than make it to the floor for a vote. So committees will also amend and rewrite bills that are introduced by members of the legislature. They have that power too. Committees have great power. Because again, they're a roadblock, they're an additional roadblock to a bill reaching the floor for a vote and being on its way to the governor's desk for a signature or veto. Legislators, I always get those two. I say legislators when I mean the legislature, and legislature when I mean legislators. Legislators, I can read, are usually nominated by party primaries. They're always elected by popular vote. So 2 or 3 people might want to be the Republican nominee for a state representative. All right, that's fine. They'll all go out there, they'll make their case to their district, but come primary time, the Republicans of, say, District 1 will go and vote and choose one of the 3. And one of those 3 will go up against one of maybe 5 Democrats, and may the best man win. Or woman. Forgot that. We'll just get it all in there. The success of candidates is based on many informal qualifications, such as party, religion, race, occupation. There are people out there, there are voters out there who will just vote with the guy with an R after his name, no matter what. Same with Democrats, same with Libertarians and Greens. So people are loyal to party, religion. Joe Biden, and before him, John Kennedy. I mean, they were Catholics, and I imagine that mattered a great deal to a lot of people. So they may have voted for those two for president just because they were Catholics and shared their faith. Race, occupation. This guy's a lawyer. He must know what he's doing. He knows the law. Let's vote him in. People vote for candidates for all sorts of reasons. Silly, serious, based on research, based on gut feeling, based on family tradition. Grandpa was a Republican. My dad was a Republican, so it's good enough for me. That sort of mentality. That's democracy. That's how we run. Legislators are elected from single-member districts in their states, and they must have roughly equal population. And they'll serve either 2 or 4-year terms. We're one of the 44 states that our representatives will serve 2-year terms, and we're one of the 38 states where senators serve 4-year terms. 15 states have term limits for legislators. We are not one of them. We do not seem to believe in term limits for anybody. We just keep recycling the same people over and over and over again. And state legislatures meet each year for 3 to 5 months. Yeah, there's a general session, there's a veto session. If the governor, calls an emergency session, there's that too. But those, these sessions, they'll meet for days at a time over a period of months. These legislatures among the states, they have all powers not granted to the other branches or denied by the state or U.S. Constitution. So again, Amendment 10 right there in action, and their legislative powers. And again, you should look at the Illinois Constitution. I mean it. That's why I keep bringing it up. You should print one out or download one and look at it, read it, memorize it. Whatever you want to do. They can tax, spend, borrow, establish courts, define what crimes are, set punishments, regulate business, maintain public schools. The broad police power of the state lets the state legislatures protect and promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. I've always had a problem with this one. So I don't know that it's the business of government to be in the morality business, but that could just be me. And don't let this term throw you, particularly when you see something like police power. My mind tends to go to like martial law or some other scary thing. Again, it's just what the state has the power to enforce. So the police might come, but there's no, it's not like a night raid on some establishment that's not living up to the morals that the state legislature thinks it should have. It's nothing like that. It's just, we need to enforce the laws as equally and as fairly as possible. That sort of thing. So state laws, they govern many areas of daily life. Again, state laws, the state government in general is much more important, and I tell you this 15 times in a semester at least. It's more important than what the federal government does. So it governs many areas of daily life, like the regulation of driver's licenses, minimum wage, laws above the federal level. So the federal level is set at, let me take a look because I don't happen to know. There's a lot I'm not knowing today. Federal minimum wage is set at $12. And right now, Illinois minimum wage is set January 1st, 2021, the minimum wage increased again to $11 per hour. Because we're trying to get it up to 15 I know that. We're trying to get it up to $15 an hour. But again, since the federal law passed, the federal minimum wage is $12. Illinois has to comply, and Illinois businesses rather have to comply with that and pay employees a minimum wage of $12 an hour. If Illinois, said this isn't fair, like we did, and minimum wage needs to be $15 an hour, and we're going to pass a law that incrementally gets it there, that's fine. Illinois minimum wage could be $15 an hour. Federal minimum wage could be $12. Illinois is meeting that $12 threshold, so there's no problem. So why are these policies determined at the state level? Well, the states know their needs best. The states supposedly know their population pretty darn well. So drivers, student drivers, 16, right? Minimum wage we just discovered, was $12 an hour. This is what the state has determined its people need to get by, and the minimum age, like somebody can operate a motor vehicle. I was scared to death to take driver's ed. I wouldn't do it until my senior year, and I was kind of forced into it by family. I was perfectly content to let people drive me around for as long as possible. I don't know what I was so scared of. It's fine now, but who knows what's going on in your head when you're a teen. So all state legislatures, who knows what's going on in my head now? I don't. Most days I don't. All state legislatures have some non-legislative powers, often as part of the system of checks and balances, so they can approve or reject some appointed officials. The Senate does this for gubernatorial appointments for department heads. In almost every state, the legislature can impeach a state officer. So we can do that. Our legislature can do that. Say Jesse White does something bad. The Illinois House of Representatives draws up a bill stating what he did, and the Illinois Senate will act as judge. And if the Illinois Senate finds Jesse White guilty, then Jesse White's just removed from office. And anything after that is up to law enforcement agencies to whether to punish him or not. Legislatures exercise the constituent power by proposing constitutional amendments as well. And these are hard to do in Illinois as well, just like constitutional amendments are hard to pass on the federal level. So, what do a legislature's presiding officers do? And if you were in my in-person class, I'd stop it here and ask, what do a legislature's presiding officers do? And everybody would assiduously avoid looking at me, and I'd just call on someone and they would have to answer. But I can't do that with you guys, so we'll just say that they refer bills to committee, recognize members who want to speak, and interpret and apply the rules of their house and its proceedings. And this is very bare bones. In the lower house, roughly half the upper house is the presiding officer will appoint the chairs and other members of each committee. And that's basically, that's bare bones what the presiding officers do. The President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House, in our case, Illinois. So there are standing committees. These standing committees, that man is standing up, but standing up is not required in a standing committee. They will decide which bills will go to the floor and which will not. So proposed bills, they'll come from public or private sources outside of the legislature, many of them, but only a legislator can introduce them for consideration. So JB wants a bill on raising the minimum wage again to $18. Fine, JB can do that. He can draft a bill, but he'd have to get, say, his buddy Chris Welch, the Speaker, to introduce it on the floor of the House of Representatives. So I'm covering some of the, no. What's going on? All right. So the initiative, and I talked about this a moment ago, they'll allow voters in some states to propose amendments or ordinary laws. So we can do that. The most common form is the direct initiative. So voters, they have to sign a petition to propose a law. And when they get, say, 5,000 signatures, I'm pulling that number out of air. That has nothing to do with anything. If they get 5,000 signatures, then they can go to the State Board of Elections, and the State Board of Elections will have to put that on the ballot. So in the direct initiative, the measure then goes to the voters for approval or rejection. So in a rarer indirect initiative, after that happens, the measure then goes to the legislature. So the voters will collect the signatures, they'll submit it. The submitted proposed law will then go to the legislature. And that's very rare. Very rare that does happen. So in many states, voters can write new laws. They can prevent laws from taking effect through the initiative process. So they take two forms. Voters write a new law, they gather signatures and support, or the proposed law goes directly to the ballot, or the proposed law goes to the legislature, or voters approve or reject the measure, or the legislature approves it or sends to voters. So it can go those ways. So one, and I'm pointing at the screen like you can see it. So this happens, then it could go this way and that way. Or it can go up here and end there. So either way, it starts with the voters writing a new law. And gathering signatures and support. Then it can go one or two paths. Then it goes directly to the ballot and they approve the voters or reject it, or the proposed law goes to the legislature and the legislature approves it or sends it to the voters. Now, why do you think many legislators oppose the initiative process? The most basic answer I can think of is it takes their power away. And nobody likes giving up power voluntarily. Nobody. So in a referendum, the legislature refers a measure to voters to be approved or rejected. Again, initiative, citizen-led, referendum, legislature-led. Remember the difference. There are mandatory referendums, and these apply to measures that must be approved by voters. Usually there's some constitutional amendment or requirement that something has to be approved by the voters. There's optional referendums, so the legislature chooses to let the public vote on a measure. In their magnanimity, they condescend to send it to us, the public. Popular referendum, citizens will sign a petition and demand a popular vote to approve or reject a law already passed. So there's a law passed that says you can only go 50 miles per hour on the freeway. Well, everybody thinks that's too slow, so citizens statewide pass or gather enough signatures to get support to force the legislature into adopting a popular referendum. Right? Optional referendum, the legislature will say, well, let's kick it to the constituents and see what they think. Mandatory, they have to. Voters in the states can write new laws or prevent laws from taking effect through the referendum. So there are one form only. The legislature proposes a new law, the proposed law goes to the ballot, and voters approve or reject the measure. 1, 2, 3. You might see this on the next test. Remember, just the one that is opening tomorrow just covers federalism in the Illinois Constitution. But that's it. I might ask you, say, what are the 3 steps for a referendum? That's it. Legislature proposes a new law, the proposed law goes to the ballot, voters approve or reject the measure. Okay, we're almost done. So the legislative process. Bills are introduced by legislators, but can be written by officers and agencies of state and local government. Anyone can write a bill. Interest groups, lobbyists, private individuals, anyone. I won't say it's an easy thing to do, but it's something that anybody can do. So voters can propose constitutional amendments or can propose statutes by initiative. Again, initiatives are voter-led, which involves submitting signed petitions. A referendum is a process by which a legislative measure is decided upon by the state's voters. So now that you have learned about the defining traits and proposed and purpose of state legislatures, go back and answer the chapter essential question. How much power should state government have? And maybe your mind was changed, maybe not. But I'm going to put this question up again on the discussion board and find out what you think, or if your mind's changed at all. All right. Again, if you were in my in-person class, we'd take a little quiz here, but I can't do that. So how are voting districts determined by legislators? Land area, tax base, urban or rural status, population. Population. Most states hold new legislative sessions every... Any guesses? Year. Critical thinking. Oh my God. Making comparisons. How is the path the bill takes to become a law similar in the state legislature and the National Congress? So the bill is introduced by legislators, sent to a committee, reported back, passed by both houses, and signed by the chief executive. Same thing, state and federal. The conference committee can resolve to differences, and the legislature may pass a bill over an executive veto by a 2/3 majority vote. So that is that. Don't forget, again, take your test. I'm not opening it up again unless somebody has a truly, truly, truly excellent excuse. There are no essay questions, no nothing, just multiple choice, true, false, multiple answer to. Use your good sense. If I say, what are the 6 traits of something or the other? Well, that should, hey, there might be 6 answers. Don't just give me one. Anyway, if you stuck with me, thanks for watching. If you want another 2 points extra credit, email me. What's the sign behind me? The sign behind me says, let our hearts be full of both thanks and giving. It's right there. Let our hearts be full of both thanks and giving. And if you send me that in another email, I'll throw you another 2 points extra credit. All right. Good luck on the test. I'll make another video just to show you, just to walk you through the test again. And I will see you next week.